Racist woman disrespects black FBI agent on a plane, but what happens next shocks everyone. Marcus Davis was seated in a chair in the departure lounge of Dallas International Airport, lost in his thoughts. The constant noise of rolling luggage and flight announcements couldn't distract him from what truly mattered. He glanced at his watch, anxiety swelling in his chest. Just a few more hours until I see Lily, he thought, recalling the little girl who was only 8 years old and whom he hadn't seen in a long time. His obligations with the FBI had kept him away from her, and now he finally had the chance to reunite. The image of her bright smile lit up his mind, and he smiled involuntarily. Meanwhile, next to him, a woman was engaged in an animated phone conversation. Catherine Mitchell, a business executive with an arrogant demeanor, gestured as if conducting an orchestra. "No, I won't accept that offer. They need to understand they can't underestimate me just because I'm a woman," she said with disdain, completely ignoring the discomfort of those around her. Marcus glanced at her out of the corner of his eye, noticing how she treated people as if they were mere obstacles in her way. He decided to stay out of it and returned to his thoughts of Lily. When Catherine finally hung up, her frustration with the boarding line transformed into an impulsive act. "What a slow line! This is unacceptable." She shoved her suitcase forcefully and without looking bumped into Marcus. "Sorry," he murmured, trying to maintain his composure. But Catherine was not willing to let that slip go unnoticed. "Sorry? You must be kidding," she shot back, her voice cutting. "It seems like security isn't a priority for everyone. It's not every day I see an FBI agent in first class, but you clearly don't belong here." Marcus felt his cheeks heat up. He didn't want to stoop to her level, but her provocation was hard to ignore. "I'm here just like any other passenger. I don't see the need to insult someone you don't know," he replied, trying to keep his tone neutral, but he couldn't hide the indignation building inside him. "Oh, of course. What else would you expect from someone who doesn't know how to behave? After all, it's hard to find someone who fits in a place like this when they don't have the proper training," Catherine continued, her disdainful expression intensifying. Other passengers began to notice the exchange, and an awkward silence spread through the lounge. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to ignore the provocation. He remembered his daughter again, the way she looked at him with admiration, and how he wanted to be a role model of integrity for her. "Please leave me alone," he requested, frustration seeping into his voice. Catherine just laughed, a cold, sarcastic sound. "Leave you alone. You're in my way, agent. And if you can't handle that, maybe you should reconsider your career choice," she said, with a mocking smile. Marcus looked around, realizing that other passengers were paying attention. Some exchanged disapproving glances, while others seemed to be enjoying the spectacle. "I apologize for this, sir," said a flight attendant who approached to intervene. Her smile was friendly, but Marcus could see in her eyes that she was aware of the tense atmosphere. "We're about to begin boarding. Can I offer something to help calm things down?" Catherine rolled her eyes, clearly uninterested in the offer. "No, thank you. I just wish people would know their place," she replied, casting a disdainful glance at Marcus. He felt as if he were in a ring, about to enter a fight he hadn't asked for. The flight attendant looked at Marcus, seeking his support. "If you need help, I'm here," she added, her eyes full of empathy. He nodded in acknowledgement, grateful for her gesture. But in that moment, Marcus knew that the battle against prejudice and arrogance was just beginning, and he was determined not to yield to Catherine's hostility. As the plane ascended, the tension between Marcus and Catherine hung in the air like a storm cloud, ready to burst. The flight attendant, Jennifer, noticed the situation while distributing snacks. She was an experienced professional, and her instincts alerted her that something was wrong. Marcus, with his serious expression, tried to focus on his thoughts about his daughter, while Catherine, with her elevated tone, continued to provoke. "Do you really think you deserve to be here in first class?" Catherine spat, turning to Marcus with a sarcastic smile. "You know, it's not every day I see someone like you in a place like this." "That's none of your business," Marcus replied, maintaining his calm. He made a point of not engaging in the provocation, trying to ignore the pressure building in his chest. But Catherine's voice continued to echo around him, drawing the attention of other passengers who began to watch the scene unfold. "Look around," she continued, pointing to the other travelers who, uncomfortable, exchanged nervous glances. "Do you really think anyone like you fits in here? This is a place for people who strive, who have class, and you are far from it." "You don't know anything about me," Marcus responded, his voice now more firm. "And I suggest you keep your opinions to yourself." Catherine laughed, a biting sound that sliced through the air. "Oh, of course, the FBI agent thinks he's superior. It must be hard carrying that weight on your shoulders, right? But don't worry, I'm just saying what everyone thinks. You're not special." Jennifer, realizing that the situation was escalating, decided to intervene. "Ma'am, please, let's keep a respect. Everyone is here for a peaceful flight." Catherine turned to Jennifer with contempt. "And who do you think you are to tell me what to do? Just a flight attendant trying to feel important?" The flight attendant took a deep breath, trying to keep her composure. "My job is to ensure everyone feels comfortable and safe, and that includes intervening when necessary." Meanwhile, murmurs began to arise among the passengers. An elderly woman, seated in the row ahead, turned to observe the scene with concern. She had fought her own battles against prejudice and discrimination and felt a wave of empathy for Marcus. Remembering a time when she felt powerless in the face of hostility, she decided she wouldn't stay silent. "I think you should apologize," the elderly woman said, her voice firm and clear. "No one has the right to belittle others like that." Catherine turned, surprised by the defense. "Tos, and who are you to tell me what to do? An old lady who probably knows nothing about the business world." "I am someone who has seen a lot and learned to respect people, regardless of their appearance or occupation," the woman replied, her gaze challenging. "You could learn something from that." Marcus, feeling supported, looked at the elderly woman and offered her a slight smile of gratitude. The solidarity among the passengers began to grow, and he realized he was not alone in this battle. Although Catherine was trying to destabilize him, the courage of the woman served as a powerful reminder that the fight against prejudice was a collective cause. Before we continue this thrilling story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any stories, and let us know which city you're watching this video from in the comments. Catherine, realizing she was no longer in control of the situation, tried to change tactics. "You all are ridiculous," she said, tossing her hair back in a dismissive gesture. "This is a flight, not a support meeting. I don't owe anyone an explanation." "Yes, but you need to respect others," Marcus interjected, his voice louder and clearer. "This isn't just a matter of class. It's a matter of humanity. Everyone deserves respect." Jennifer, noticing the shift in dynamics, decided it was time to act. "Ma'am, if you continue this behavior, I may have to ask you to leave the flight. This is unacceptable." Catherine, now surrounded by disapproving glances, felt the pressure increase. The environment that once seemed to be her territory was quickly transforming into a hostile place for her. The elderly woman, Marcus, and other passengers were united in one thought. Intolerance and disdain had no plans. The tension was palpable, and the atmosphere was becoming more electrified. What should have been a simple flight to Washington, D.C., was turning into a battleground of ideals and values, where dignity was beginning to prevail over prejudice. Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the tension in the air like a weight on his shoulders. The atmosphere inside the airplane cabin was charged, and the glances from some passengers alternated between him and Catherine, who seemed to be enjoying the provocaille. He could no longer ignore her comments. It was time to react. "Look, miss," Marcus began, his voice firm but controlled, "I don't know what you think you're doing, but it's enough." Catherine turned to him, an ironic smile forming on her lips. "What are you going to do, report me to the pilot?" she said, her voice loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "You're not an FBI agent just because you're wearing an expensive suit." He felt his anger rise, but he didn't want it to overpower him. He couldn't let that woman make him lose his composure. "Actually, I am an FBI agent. I'm on an official mission and don't have time for your provocations," he replied, keeping his eyes locked on hers. The silence that followed was palpable, and Marcus felt the attention of the other passengers turn toward them. Catherine froze for a moment. The expression on her face quickly shifted from disdain to slight discomfort. "Oh, sure, and I'm the Queen of England," she retorted, but the firmness in her voice was already wavering. "You can continue to behave despicably, but know that it will only make you appear smaller than you already are," he said, his voice now louder, drawing the attention of passengers who leaned in to listen. Jennifer, the flight attendant who had been watching the scene from a distance, approached, sensing the change in dynamics. "Ladies and gentlemen, please," she intervened, trying to put an end to the situation. "What is happening here?" Catherine, with a defiant look, responded, "This man thinks he can impose himself just because he's wearing a suit. It's laughable." Marcus didn't let himself be shaken. "It's not about wearing a suit. It's about respect. What you're doing is unacceptable," he said, his voice resonating in the cabin. Murmurs began to rise among the passengers. Some shook their heads in disapproval, while others exchanged glances of solidarity with Marcus. An elderly woman, sitting a few rows away, watched the scene with an expression of empathy. She had already experienced discrimination and felt Marcus's pain. "I don't know how you can be like this," the elderly woman finally said, standing up from her seat. "It's shameful. We all deserve respect, regardless of our appearance or profession." Catherine, visibly shaken, tried to deflect. "You don't know what you're talking about. He should be grateful to be here in first class," she shot back, but her voice no longer held the same confidence. Marcus sensed that the tide was turning. The elderly woman's courage seemed to have encouraged other passengers to stand up. A man sitting nearby stood up and said, "That's right. Respect is something we all should have. You have no right to belittle anyone." Catherine looked around, realizing that people were beginning to unite in support of Marcus. The mood, which had previously been hostile, was starting to shift. "Look, she began, trying to justify herself, but the fury she had before now seemed to fade as voices rose against her. Jennifer, seizing the opportunity, took a firm stance. "Catherine, if you don't stop these comments, I will have to ask you to leave the flight. This is unacceptable." Catherine, furious, crossed her arms and slouched back in her seat, her expression of disdain now mixed with a touch of fear. She knew she had crossed all limits, and her arrogance was about to cost her dearly. Marcus felt a mix of relief and triumph. He had stood up and in doing so not only defended himself, but also became the voice for many who lacked the courage to speak out. The silence that followed was heavy, but the tension had shifted, and he was determined not to let Catherine intimidate him again. The atmosphere inside the airplane cabin was thick and tense, as if all the passengers around were holding their breath, waiting for the unfolding of this embarrassing situation. Catherine, now completely exposed, looked around with a mix of anger and desperation. The businessman sitting near her, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a firm gaze, stood up and confronted Catherine with a disapproving expression. "You need to respect this man," he said, his voice firm but controlled. "What you're doing is unacceptable." Catherine turned her head, her eyes wide with indignation. "And who do you think you are to tell me what to do? This is a flight, not an activist assembly," she retorted, her arrogance still present in her tone, but now laced with a tremor of insecurity. The murmurs around her began to grow, and other passengers, previously timid, started to speak up. An older woman with white hair and a gentle gaze turned in her seat and said, "You should be ashamed, young lady. What you said is horrible." The atmosphere began to shift, and a feeling of solidarity spread through the cabin. People started to move, some leaning forward, others crossing their arms, all casting reproachful looks at Catherine. The environment that had once been tense was now transforming into a space of support for Marcus. Jennifer, the flight attendant, noticed the change. With a determined look, she approached, standing beside Marcus. "Ma'am, I need to ask you to apologize to this gentleman. This behavior will not be tolerated on our aircraft," she stated, her voice clear and firm with a touch of authority. "Apologize? Why? He's just an FBI agent. It's not like he's someone important," Catherine replied, disdain dripping from her words, but her anger was now mixed with a slight tremor of fear. The tone of the other passengers was forcing her to realize that the situation had changed drastically. "That doesn't matter," Jennifer continued, undeterred by the executive's attitude. "Everyone deserves respect, regardless of their job or appearance. If you can't behave, you will be removed from the flight." Catherine looked around, her defiant gaze beginning to fade as the reality of her situation settled in. The businessman who had confronted her was now stepping forward, gesturing with his hand. "You need to understand that your words have consequences, ma'am. No one here is willing to tolerate this kind of behavior." Catherine's fury simmered beneath the surface, but the collective pressure from the passengers was suffocating her. She glanced at Marcus, who was regarding her with an almost disdainful calm. He knew her moment had come, and her once haughty expression was now morphing into a mask of panic. "If you do not apologize, we will have to call security," Jennifer reiterated, crossing her arms firmly. What had once been a position of power was now becoming a struggle for Catherine's social survival. She felt cornered, and in a last-ditch effort to maintain some semblance of control, she shot back, "You're all a bunch of moralists. This is absurd." The businessman stepped forward, his voice raised. "And you are a disgrace to all of us. What you did was far more than absurd. It was a clear demonstration of prejudice and a lack of humanity." Catherine, now at a loss for words, looked around and realized that most passengers were on Marcus's side. The mood in the cabin had shifted, and a sense of victory was beginning to form around Marcus. He had confronted injustice, and now those around him were uniting against prejudice. The tension was palpable, and Jennifer, realizing that Catherine had not apologized, did as she had said. "I will call security," she announced, resolute. "No one deserves to be treated this way, and we cannot allow this to continue." Catherine, realizing her time was running out, sank back into her seat. The look of contempt she had maintained was now mixed with a hint of desperation. The plane began preparing for landing, and a sense of relief started to wash over the cabin, but not for Catherine. She knew her behavior would have consequences, and for a moment, her arrogance gave way to the recognition that she was about to face the reality of her actions. Marcus Davis was anxiously waiting in the arrival area of Washington, D.C.'s International Airport. His heart was pounding in his chest, a mix of anxiety and anticipation. He felt a deep longing for his daughter, Lily, who was waiting for him at home. As he looked around, trying to spot her in the crowd, his phone vibrated. It was a call from her. "Hi, Daddy. When are you getting here?" Lily's sweet and excited voice echoed from the other end of the line, and an involuntary smile spread across Marcus's face. "Hey, sweetheart. I'm almost there. I just landed. Are you ready to see me?" He tried to hide the emotion flooding his heart at the thought of their warm embrace. "Yes, I'm making a sign to welcome you. It's going to be amazing. But you brought my gift, right?" Lily's teasing made Marcus laugh. "Of course, but the most important gift is you, Lily. I can't wait to hug you." He glanced once more at the bustling movement around him, still without a sign of his daughter. A mix of relief and joy blended with his anxiety as he listened to her laughter. "Are you going to tell me all about your mission?" "I bet it was exciting," Lily asked, filled with curiosity. "I promise I'll tell you everything, but first, let's meet up. I'm heading out of the arrival area now." Marcus ended the call and tucked his phone into his pocket, feeling a wave of happiness wash over him at being so close to reuniting with his daughter. As he waited, his thoughts were interrupted by the sight of Catherine being escorted by airport security. The woman who had caused him so much indignation during the flight wore an expression of despair and humiliation. Her flushed cheeks and wide eyes showed that she was facing the consequences of her actions. Marcus felt a mix of compassion and satisfaction. Justice had been served, but the victory did not bring the joy he expected. When Catherine passed by him, their eyes met. She hesitated, as if she wanted to say something, but security pulled her forward, and Marcus decided it wasn't worth his time to care. He had already faced enough for one day. Now, it was time to focus on what really mattered. "Are you all right, sir?" A gentle voice interrupted his thoughts. It was the elderly woman who had supported Marcus during the flight. She approached slowly, her gaze filled with understanding and empathy. "Yes, I'm fine. Just thinking about my daughter." Marcus smiled, grateful for the silent support he had received from the passengers. "You were very brave. It's hard to see someone stand up against discrimination, but you did it. And please, don't let what happened with her get you down. Sometimes people act that way because they're lost in their own insecurities," the woman said, with a wisdom that only experience could offer. "Thank you. I appreciate your words. It really means a lot to me." "No worries, ours." He watched Catherine being taken away, a part of him wishing she could understand the impact of her actions. However, what worried him most was how Lily would perceive all of this. He wanted to teach her to fight for what is right, to be brave. Before he could get lost in more thoughts, his cell phone vibrated again. It was a text message from Lily. "I'm on my way, Dad. Are you near the exit?" "Yes, sweetheart, I'm almost there," he replied quickly, feeling the anticipation grow. He knew that the reunion with his daughter would be a moment of renewal, a reminder of what truly mattered in life. As he waited, the elderly woman said her goodbyes, wishing Marcus good luck in his reunion. "Remember, it's always good to have courage and fight for what's right. You made a difference today. Thank you. I hope we can see a better world for our children," Marcus replied, appreciating the connection he had made with that stranger. Finally, the automatic exit door opened, and there was Lily, holding a huge sign that read "Welcome, Dad" in colorful letters. Upon seeing his daughter, Marcus felt his heart swell with love and pride. He ran toward her, his eyes glistening with tears of joy. "Hi, Dad!" Lily shouted, running into his arms. He enveloped her in a tight hug, feeling all the weight and tension of the day disappear. "Hi, my girl, I've missed you," Marcus said, as she pulled back a bit to look into his eyes. "I missed you too. Now let's go home," Lily exclaimed, radiant. And as they walked together out of the airport, Marcus knew that no matter what happened, he would continue to fight for a fairer world for her and for everyone. Jennifer watched the frenetic movement of the airport, the sound of luggage being dragged, and the hurried voices of passengers echoing around her. After the emotional turbulence she had witnessed during the flight, she felt reflective and disturbed. Catherine's attitude had deeply unsettled her, and now more than ever, she found herself questioning her own story and the experiences that shaped her worldview. As she walked down the corridor leading to the flight attendant's break room, Jennifer caught a glimpse of what her life could have been like had she not grown up in an environment where respect for diversity was fundamental. She remembered her grandmother, a strong woman who always encouraged her to stand against injustice. "You must use your voice, dear. Never stay silent in the face of discrimination," she would say. Those words echoed in her mind, and Jennifer realized that throughout her career, she had often remained silent in similar situations, fearing retaliation or disapproval from colleagues. Upon arriving in the break room, she found her co-workers chatting animatedly. Jennifer hesitated for a moment, but the desire to share her experience and promote change was stronger. She approached the group, which welcomed her with curious looks. "Hey everyone, can I have a minute of your attention?" Jennifer. "I was thinking about what happened on the flight, the way that woman treated Marcus. This can't be ignored." The other flight attendants exchanged glances. One of them, a man named David, frowned. "Jennifer, I know it was ugly, but we can't get involved in every fight. It's complicated, you know." "Complicated?" Jennifer couldn't contain her indignation. "Complicated is staying silent while we see prejudice happening right in front of us. If we don't speak up now, what's stopping us from being complicit in this kind of behavior?" Jennifer's words hung in the air, and an awkward silence filled the group. Finally, a woman named Sarah, who had always been more reserved, spoke up. "You're right, Jennifer. We, as flight attendants, have a responsibility to ensure that all passengers feel safe and respected. We can't ignore these situations." Jennifer's heart raced upon hearing Sarah's support. "Exactly. And if we who are in a position of power don't act, who will? We need a plan, something that can help us intervene when we witness discrimination." David, realizing the conversation was taking a new direction, finally agreed. "All right, maybe we should think about an awareness program, something that teaches us how to respond appropriately in discrimination situations." "Yes," Jennifer exclaimed, feeling energized. "We can create training for ourselves and all the staff at the company, teach about diversity, inclusion, and how to intervene in difficult situations." The group began discussing ideas, each contributing suggestions and personal experiences. Jennifer felt that finally she was making a difference. Looking around, she saw faces lit up with passion and the desire to change. "I'll do some research on existing awareness programs," suggested Sarah. "We can adapt something that already works and impy." The meeting continued, and the positive energy that spread through the group was palpable. Jennifer realized that together they could create a more inclusive environment. It was time to leave behind fear and inaction. After all, each of them had a voice, and together they could use it to make a difference. As the conversation unfolded, Jennifer couldn't help but feel that this experience had changed her. The fight against discrimination was not just a responsibility, but a personal mission. She was determined not only to speak out, but to act, ensuring that the next time she witnessed an act of prejudice, she would be ready to intervene, just as her grandmother had always encouraged her. Catherine Mitchell sat in a cold, impersonal room with grey walls and a metal table between her and the security agent. Her mind was racing, recalling what had happened on the flight. The humiliation she felt when Marcus introduced himself as an FBI agent still burned like an open wound. But more than that, she couldn't escape the echo of her own racist and arrogant words. Deep down, she knew that this wasn't just a momentary outburst. It was part of something much deeper that defined her. Flashbacks of her divorce began to haunt her as frustration and insecurity enveloped her like a dense fog. The image of her ex-husband laughing and leaving her for a younger woman mixed with the feeling of inadequacy she carried. Catherine remembered how she had tried to reaffirm herself, always seeking the recognition and validation she felt she had lost. "I am more than this," she thought to herself, trying to convince herself that her social status and career were a reflection of her worth. But on the contrary, these achievements merely masked her vulnerabilities. "So, Catherine, what do you have to say about what happened today on the flight?" asked the security agent, breaking her reverie. His voice was neutral, but it carried a firm tone that left no room for evasions. "It was a misunderstanding," Catherine replied, her defensive tone evident. "I was just having a tough day. That person provoked me." She gestured, looking down at the floor, trying to avoid the agent's gaze as if that could make her invisible. "Provoked? Are you referring to the fact that he was a black man in first class?" The agent pressed, raising an eyebrow. "What you said was discriminatory, and this isn't the first time you've exhibited this kind of attitude, is it?" Catherine felt a knot in her throat. "No, that's not how I see things. I was frustrated with the situation." Her voice faltered, and she realized her words were sounding increasingly empty. "Frustration doesn't justify discrimination," the agent replied, with a calmness that irritated her. "People like you need to understand that your words have consequences. Do you think what you said won't impact others? Have you realized how serious it was?" Catherine closed her eyes, trying to block out the reality surrounding her. The agent's words hit her like a punch to the stomach. She felt the weight of shame and guilt, but at the same time an inner voice insisted that she hadn't done anything that wrong. "I'm a successful executive. I'm just trying to survive in this competitive world," she thought. "I'm not racist. I just don't understand why he was there." As the agent continued to speak, Catherine decided she needed to defend herself, even if it meant confronting the truth she feared. "What I said wasn't right, but I'm a businesswoman. I live in a world where people are judged by their worth and achievements. I can't be held accountable for that." "Your values are questionable, Catherine," the agent said with a penetrating look. "And if you don't change, the consequences will be severe. Discrimination isn't just a personal problem, it's a social issue, and you must take responsibility for your actions." She took a deep breath, feeling cornered. "What do you want from me?" "An apology. I'm not the only one who thinks this way. Everyone has their opinions, and I'm just being honest." "Honesty isn't an excuse for prejudice," he replied, his tone firm. "And you'll need more than honesty to deal with this." Catherine felt anger rising within her, but at the same time a wave of despair washed over her. The words of the passengers echoed in her mind, and for a moment she felt completely alone. The agent was right. Her defense wasn't enough. The weight of her actions began to crystallize into something she couldn't ignore, and for the first time she started to understand that her quest for validation could come at a very high price. Catherine Mitchell was furious. Sitting in the interrogation room, the humiliation still burned in her chest like a fresh wound. The idea that a mere FBI agent, a man she considered inferior, could destabilize her life put her on high alert. As soon as the door closed behind the security agent, she decided she would not let this slide. Catherine took a deep breath and began plotting her revenge. In the following days, Catherine devoted herself to researching Marcus. She used her tech knowledge and networking skills to uncover everything she could about the agent who dared to oppose her. Sitting at her office desk, surrounded by photos of corporate events and awards she had earned throughout her career, each click of the keyboard fueled her anger, transforming it into an insatiable energy. "Let's see how far your courage goes, Marcus Davis," she murmured, her eyes gleaming with determination. Catherine began scouring social media and public records. On her laptop, a screen filled with documents and personal information about Marcus unfolded. She discovered details about his life, his daughter Lily, and the mission that kept him so busy. Catherine smiled as she visualized his vulnerability. "You may be an FBI agent, but everyone has a weak point," she thought, feeling increasingly confident. One morning, while sipping her coffee, Catherine received a call from an old contact in the industry. "Hi, Karen. I need some information about an FBI agent. His name is Marcus Davis. Can you help?" Her voice was smooth, but it had an underlying coldness that made it threatening. "Marcus Davis? What do you want with him?" Karen asked, intrigued. "I just want to know if he has any vulnerabilities, something that could be used against him," Catherine replied, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a sob. She knew that Karen had her own contacts and could obtain information she couldn't get on her own. "I can see what I can do." "But you know this is risky, right? The last thing you need is to draw unwanted attention to yourself," Karen warned. "Risky or not, I need the information," Catherine insisted. "If I don't get my revenge, I'll be seen as the loser in this story, and I can't allow that." Meanwhile, at FBI headquarters, Marcus was focused on his mission. He met with his team, discussing strategies for an ongoing case. The tension from the flight still lingered in his mind, but he was determined to move past it and concentrate on the work. "Did you hear about the situation on the flight?" asked a colleague, Jake, as he flipped through some documents. Yeah, I heard some things, but I don't want to think about that right now. I have more work to do, Marcus replied, adjusting his tie. You know that taking a stand like that can have consequences, right? Not just for you, but for the agency too, Jake cautioned. I know, Jake, but if we don't do something, how can we expect things to change? Someone has to stand up against this kind of discrimination, Marcus responded, his voice firm. Catherine, on the other hand, was determined to destabilize Marcus's image. If I can't attack him directly, I'll undermine his reputation within the FBI, she thought, while typing an email to an old college friend who now held an influential position. Can you help me dig up some information about him? Something that could be used to question his integrity. It doesn't have to be anything too serious, just something to make people stop and think. Catherine sent the email and felt a wave of satisfaction as she imagined how everything would unfold. Yes, she was preparing for battle, a fight that was not just about revenge but also about restoring her own image. The idea that an ordinary man could challenge her only fueled her determination further. If I can't be the winner, then let him feel the pain of defeat, she thought, a dark smile playing on her lips. The days passed, and while Marcus moved on with his life and work, Catherine sank deeper into her quest for vengeance. She was about to take the next step, and the tension between them continued to grow like a thread about to snap. The atmosphere in the FBI's conference room was thick with expectation. The white walls reflected the fluorescent lights, creating a space that resembled a courtroom where crucial decisions were made. Marcus Davis sat at the table, his heart pounding faster than usual. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, but he knew that what he had done on the flight would not go unnoticed. The serious and focused faces of his superiors formed a semicircle in front of him. Agent Davis, began the director of the department, a middle-aged man with graying hair and an authoritative voice. We are here to discuss your conduct during the incident on the flight to Washington. Do you have anything to say before we begin? Marcus took a deep breath, recalling the tension he had faced. I only did what I thought was right. I couldn't remain silent while someone attacked another person's dignity. The room murmured slightly, and the director nodded as if he had already expected this response. The courage you demonstrated was admirable, but we must consider the implications of your actions. You know that situations like this can escalate quickly. Yes, sir, Marcus replied, maintaining his composure. But if we don't stand up against prejudice, when will we? Injustice cannot be ignored. The director looked at the other team members, who seemed to ponder his words. Finally, a woman, the chief of diversity at the FBI, interjected. Marcus, not only did you stand up against racism, but you also inspired others to do the same. Several passengers reported your bravery and expressed their support. It's good to hear that, he said, feeling a bit more at ease. I was surprised by the reaction from those around me. I believe we all have a responsibility to fight against discrimination, no matter where we are. The chief of diversity smiled. We are considering a new diversity and inclusion initiative within the FBI, and your experience could be crucial. Would you be willing to lead this initiative? Marcus felt a mix of surprise and pride. I would love to, ma'am. I believe it's an important step for our agency. The director paused, looking directly at Marcus. Then let's do it. Your bravery not only encouraged the passengers, but also reminded us of the importance of having agents who stand up against injustice. From now on, you will have an active role in implementing programs that promote equality within our department. The meeting continued, with discussions about how the FBI could become an even stronger voice against prejudice. Marcus realized that by taking a stand, he had not only defended a truth, but also opened the doors to significant change. The conversation evolved into strategies and approaches that could be adopted nationwide, and he felt inspired to be at the center of something so important. But his mind was also troubled by thoughts of Catherine. He knew that the investigation into her actions was still ongoing, and the consequences she would face would be severe. He felt no joy at what might happen, but he understood that prejudice could not be tolerated. The fight against injustice had to be collective. If I may, I would like to suggest that we also consider awareness programs for the team, Marcus said, his voice firm. We need to ensure that all agents understand the importance of intervening in similar situations. We can't wait for change to happen without taking action. The chief of diversity nodded, clearly impressed. Great idea, Marcus. We'll include that in our discussion agenda. We have a long way to go, but your leadership can make a difference. After the meeting, as Marcus walked out of the room, a sense of renewal hung over him. He knew that the fight against discrimination was an ongoing effort, But now he had the opportunity to be part of something greater. The weight of expectations was heavy, but he was determined not to let the courage he had shown fade away. As he walked down the hallway, his phone vibrated. It was a message from Lily, asking when he would be home. The image of his smiling daughter lit up his day. Soon, my love, he thought. Very soon. He was ready to fight for a future where equality and justice were not just expected, but guaranteed. The investigation into Catherine Mitchell quickly brought to light a series of shocking revelations. The airline's security department did a meticulous job, interviewing passengers and employees, and collecting evidence of Catherine's hostile and discriminatory behavior. When the results were delivered, the magnitude of the scandal was undeniable. Catherine was not just a woman who had made racist comments on a flight. She was involved in systematic discriminatory practices at her company, harming employees and clients from diverse backgrounds. Meanwhile, in a conference room at the FBI, Marcus, the atmosphere was one of anticipation. Upon entering, he noticed looks of respect and admiration from his colleagues, something he was not accustomed to. His supervisor, a middle-aged man with a serious expression, began to speak. Marcus, the courage you displayed on the flight was remarkable, not just for standing up against prejudice, but for inspiring others to do the same. This had a profound and positive impact. Thank you, Marcus replied, somewhat surprised. I just did what anyone should. Don't underestimate your action. The investigation into Catherine revealed much more than we expected. Her practices are unacceptable in our society. You took the initiative to be the voice that needed to be heard. Therefore, we want to offer you a new opportunity. The proposal was for a promotion and a new position in a diversity project within the FBI, where he could work to improve community relations and combat discrimination on various fronts. Marcus felt a mix of pride and responsibilities. I'm honored, but what about Catherine? She will face the consequences of her actions. The company fired her and is dealing with legal processes. What you need to remember is that your actions have a domino effect. By standing up, you not only defended yourself but also everyone who faces discrimination daily. Meanwhile, in a dark corner of the airport, Catherine watched the scene unfold. She had been called into a meeting with her company's human resources department, where her ethical and moral failures were laid bare. The humiliation was palpable. You can't do this to me. I'm a respected executive, she exclaimed, her voice filled with desperation. Respected? Look around you, Catherine. You're alone. Your colleagues have distanced themselves from you. Your reputation is ruined, one of the directors replied, holding her gaze firmly. We are terminating you effective immediate. No one can defend what you did. Catherine felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. Loneliness and frustration enveloped her like a heavy cloak. What had become of her life? The image she had built with such effort was crumbling in an instant. However, Marcus's story didn't end there. After receiving his promotion, he headed to a nearby park, his mind still processing everything that had happened over the past few weeks. He sat on a bench and soon received a call that brightened his day. It was Lily. Hi, Daddy. When are you coming home? Her voice chimed on the other end of the line. Hi, my princess. I'm on my way. Actually, I have something very important to tell you, Marcus replied, his heart warming. What about, Daddy? About how important it is to stand up for what is right. Something happened at work that made me realize that even in tough times, courage can make a difference. I want to teach you that. Were you brave, Daddy? Like in the movie? Lily asked, curious. Yes, something like that. And I want you to know that you should always stand up for what you believe in. Always. By the end of the day, Marcus finally reunited with Lily at home. He hugged her tightly, feeling the purity of that moment. You look more beautiful than ever, he said, smiling. Thank you, Daddy. What did you learn today? Lily asked, her eyes shining. Marcus knelt down to her level. I learned that respect and justice are fundamental. We should never allow prejudice to take root, and more importantly, we should always support one another. Meanwhile, in her solitude, Catherine reflected on her choices. Each thought led her to a darker place, where her arrogance and prejudice had left her isolated. Without the company of friends or colleagues, only the echo of her actions accompanied her. The realization that true strength does not reside in status or power, but in kindness and empathy, began to haunt her. In the face of the enormity of what she had lost, she understood that the fight against discrimination was not just an external battle, but an internal struggle for redemption and understanding the impact of her actions. And while Marcus and Lily shared laughter and hopes, Catherine faced the loneliness that her choices had brought her. a constant reminder that true strength comes from the heart, not from arrogance. We've reached the end of this moving story. If you enjoyed it and want to see more tales like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Right now there's a playlist of videos on your screen. If you want to keep watching these touching stories, just click on it and you'll be watching in no time. And now tell us in the comments where you're watching from and leave your like to support our work. Now, a sincere question. Do you agree with what happened in the story? We want to know your opinion. Until the next video.